Chad LaBorde. I hope you're doing well. ESPN 104.5 in Baton Rouge. Also does a podcast there, BayouBengalTigers.com. Chad, busy week for you down there.
Yeah, it was. I've never seen this in the history of LSU. Granted, I hadn't been around since 1893, but I have never seen LSU ever do anything like this. Of course, now a lot of schools have probably done it in the month of September. To see them make the call the way they did, the administration, after screwing it up in November. That's the one thing that just automatically comes to mind, and I would say for most people that follow LSU and follow college football that are being honest, is, okay, maybe you go on a run here, maybe you don't, but you've wasted Leonard Fournette's junior year, which is like his senior year, because you didn't make this call in November. He could have had an even better year this year. Maybe he would have got nicked, in August the same way, and maybe he'd be not playing 100%, like I believe he's not up to this point with a high ankle sprain. But all in all, you botched him and not only the rest of these guys that are going to be coming out either as junior or seniors at the end of this year, because you didn't take care of business back when it got out in early November, mid-November of last year. So I feel like maybe it's a little CYA here in terms of doing it late in September rather than riding this out to the bye week before Alabama or even to the end of the season. So all in all, I'm glad they did it. I think it was the right decision. Once you saw what happened on Saturday night and it went the way it did, I mean, we've seen this movie over and over, not to mention how painful that game was to watch if you're looking for offensive football. And believe me, this was not LSU and Alabama of 2011 where you could say, look at these two great defenses knocking each other around. This is like a WWE real brawl. That's not what that was. That was a mediocre team playing a really stinky team. And that's when defensive football is not really meant to be. It's not even meant to be called that because you're insulting defense. That was just a total terrible game, really, on both sides. And obviously, Gus is happy that he got the win. But look, he's not sitting much better than where Miles is or was. Especially now that that's gone. Now that he's out of LSU, I know there's a lot of grumblings down there still. I mean, they're not happy about being 2-2, no more than 1-3. So it just eased their mind to get through the win. And same if LSU would have won. I mean, probably Miles is still here today because it would have been like, well, he came from behind. So it worked out. Some things work out for the best, and I think it worked out for LSU's purposes to get on the coaching search as early as possible. They're not ready to really name anybody, of course, between now and November 30th, likely, but at least at this point they can start making the phone calls and the feelers and try to get, similar when Alabama was searching for Nick Saban. They went to him and they weren't going to take no for an answer. They just kept going back, and finally they landed the man they really wanted. And I hope that's the case here if it's Tom Herman or Jimbo Fisher.
Now, I'm sure you've read the reports. Scott Rozelle from Football Scoop is reporting that they're going to go at least gauge the interest of guys like Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. You buying that?
Oh, no. I mean, come on. I mean, you're talking about lateral moves. You're talking about, even if Saban were to, or Meyer were to even flirt with anything like that, and I don't even believe it, but let's just pretend. Why wouldn't Alabama give him more money? Why wouldn't Ohio State give Meyer more money? It makes no sense. I mean, LSU would then have to go to, offering more than they ever thought. I mean, that I do not believe. I do not believe for a second. I did see reports of that, and you're going to hear all kind of crazy stuff, Ryan, as you well know, being in the business that we're in. You're going to hear between now and then, you're going to have panels on every ESPN college show, on every sports talk show, regardless of network. You're going to have everybody and their mother saying that LSU did the right thing, the wrong thing, that their expectations are too high, or they should be, or they're too low. I mean, you're going to hear a lot of this stuff between the games each week up until they actually pull the trigger. So this type of stuff really doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to get clicks, and anybody can be sued, but let's be realistic here. I mean, Bill Belichick could be pursued, but come on, I mean, that's not going to happen.
As we look right now, if you're saying, is it Jimbo Fisher? Is it Tom Herman? If you think Joe Oliva could go out and pick that next coach, does he prefer one or the other, or just either one that he can get?
There's three guys that I'm hearing a lot of.
Okay.
Two of them I just named you, Tom Herman, and I would say he'd be first. Jimbo Fisher could be second or third, but the other one, David Shaw at Stanford. That's what I'm hearing. And I was a little surprised, but then when you think about it and put it in perspective and look at his record in 5 seasons, well, he's in his 6th season, but in his first 5 seasons, 57-14. I know it's the Pac-12, and granted, it's not the Southeastern Conference in those prior seasons, but this is Stanford we're talking about. And yes, he does run a pro style, and he uses a lot of two tights, but he throws to the tight end. And you got to remember, he utilizes the best talent he can get, and do what he can get based on the academic restrictions he has, plus some players he might be able to swing in that normally wouldn't be at Stanford before the Jim Harbaugh era. And he's been very successful. I mean, not just looking at Christian McCaffrey. I'm looking at, linemen and the defense and everything. And he's not going to run the toss lead and toss sweep on every first and second down in every series. This is a guy that can come in and throw it on first down just like Lane Kiffin can do it, but he may not be maybe as quite as spread formation type as those guys, but he's somebody that knows how to run the right plays at the right time. And I think if you get a coach that can do that and win, then you've surpassed everything that went wrong offensively the last 6 years with Les Miles. So you can't rule David Shaw out. I mean, he's done. I thought when Harbaugh left, they were going back to 2-10, 3-9, and Stanford, if anything, has gotten not only the same but better in that stretch. So I would think of those three names right now as being three targets, with Tom Herman being first. Now Fisher, that was a done deal. Everybody I talked to said Fisher was basically picking his staff back in November. The problem is, how do you go back to Fisher and say, we want you, after you flirted with him almost a year ago? At the very least, he has a good job at Florida State. He'd have to go back to his administration. It may look a bit goofy now, which it probably should, because the LSU themselves botched it up back in November. So I don't know if he wants to be, pursued once again, not even quite a year later. So, but you have to put his name in the mix because he knows the area. He coached under Saban here and for 2 years under Miles. So you have to consider that he would be a guy that would be in that top three. But I would say right now, what I'm hearing is Herman, Shaw, and Fisher in that order. And after that, obviously you got to have other names. But if you're going to take this much time to find a coach in late September up until December or late November, to me, Tom Herman is a no-brainer. But we have to see. Remember, this administration's botched things up already. It's hard to believe that, or hard to maybe fathom that they could botch this up, but you're given a lot of time. I mean, you didn't do this at the end of October or November. You did it in September. So, to me, it's Tom Herman, Jimbo Fisher, David Shaw, in whatever order, Herman being first likely. And the rest, if you have to go to your B list, then shame on you.
I was reading an article on FoxSports.com with Aaron Torres, a national guy, and he listed 5 reasons Jimbo Fisher should reject LSU and stay at Florida State. But the one that I really want to highlight is number 5. He calls LSU administration is a mess. You're there in Baton Rouge. Do you see it that way?
I would prefer Mark Emmert if he was still here. But then Mark Emmert brought Nick Saban to Baton Rouge, and he also was an innovator beyond just being a president of a university. So, what they have right now, is it as good as it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago? Probably not. But to say it's a complete mess, to say that it's politics as usual, I mean, I've heard examples from others that have said, well, LSU hasn't changed since 1979. Yes, it's changed. I mean, the faces have changed. We know that. But if it was as bad as if today is as bad as it was 30 years ago, then why do we have a lot of things that we didn't have 30, 20 years ago. We got a football facility. We've got an academic center. We're expanding and building a nutrition center that'll be attached to the stadium. We've done so many things. We've added seats. We're up to, about where Alabama is in terms of seating capacity. Back in those days, nobody thought LSU would have 100,000 seats at Tiger Stadium in the 80s or 90s. I mean, it wasn't that kind of program. Not a perennial power or anything close to that. It was, an average SEC program that should have been winning more games at times than losing, but not to the level of what they've seen since 2000. So I would have to think that, based on a lot of thought behind whether or not the administration is not the best, I don't think it's where it was in 2001, but I don't think it's where it was in 1979 in terms of being at its worst. I think it's somewhere in the middle to upper in terms of being successful. Now, where they can look bad is if they make a hire way out of left field because they couldn't get the top 2 or 3 or 4 guys that they wanted, and you had all this time to get them when you let Miles go in September. That's where they can look bad and prove that point. But I'm going to say right now that it is not that bad, that they're going to make a quality hire. That's all I can say until the hire is made. But I don't think it's nearly as bad as some of these writers or national people seem to think.
How much does this go back? I mean, for someone who covers it, you're in touch with the fan base there. How much does Alabama's success affect Les Miles, LSU, and even other programs, Georgia with Mark Richt? Because what Alabama's doing is unique. I mean, we may never see this again in college football, but you know as just as well as I do, the fans in that area that you cover, the fans in Athens, Georgia, everybody wants to be Alabama. They want that similar success.
And I think that should make the Alabama base feel good because someone else would like to be like them. Perhaps, maybe not, depending on if they do the right things. But, yeah, I think it has a lot of bearing. Look, if it was just LSU going 11-1 and losing to Alabama 6 years or 5 years in a row, I don't think we'd be having this conversation about Miles, even though there would be people wanting him to beat some fans and administration alike to beat Alabama, but I don't think he'd be run out of town. You start losing to Arkansas and Ole Miss and losing to mediocre SEC teams, that's where the problem lies. I mean, you can go back to Charlie McClendon. Everybody says, well, he couldn't beat Bear Bryant, that's when he was run off. That's partially true. But in the 70s, he was declining and beating opponents that he was regularly beating, in the 60s and early part of the 70s. So it's a snowball effect. But no, you hit something right there in terms of, does everybody want to do what Alabama's doing and be like them? No question. LSU probably, if you look at the amount of wins overall in several, in the last decade or so, has been closer to them than most programs in the league. But you're not them. And that's the whole idea about going through this, is to try to be like them. And you're right. I mean, what Nick Saban's doing, he's like a machine. I mean, you would never have thought at any school with the scholarship limitations now that he could be where he's at. But he is, because he's excellent. But then look at what Belichick's done in New England. And they both, coached together. I mean, he coached under Belichick. So you see it kind of carries over in a different way, but in the same sport, just in different levels. And I think right now that's the goal, is to how to beat Saban. And to do it, you can't go 3 yards in a college bus. Look, Nick did it at LSU, not quite to the degree of Les, but he did. And he did it in the beginning of his tenure at Alabama. And after that 9-6 game, he says, look, I'm not going to keep playing these type of games anymore. I got to do something. And he basically said, look, I'm going to improvise my offense, and if I got to bring in a new coordinator to do it, I will. And that's what he did. And that's what Miles didn't do. If he'd have done that and still lost on a regular basis to Saban or split the series in the last 5 years, we wouldn't be talking about this today.